Hello there, welcome everybody. So it's almost 4 and I think it's high time we started. Thank you very much all early birds for coming in, presenting the talented dentist of the day. The title for today's webinar, Tackling Dental Hypersensitivity, the Challenges and Solutions. So we have here with us Dr. Sonahita Agarwal. Madam, can you please wave just to the crowd so that they will know you have come in. Thank you very much. So I will just do the onboarding process, which will last around maybe 7-8 minutes, and then I'll hand over charge to Dr. Sonaita Agarwal, madam. And yes, Professor Dr. Sonaita Agarwal, madam, is a uh, very well-renowned orthodontist who has got tremendous knowledge in various aspects of dentistry. And yes, she has a very nice, good, strong Bangalore connection. And when you see Bangalore, some of the interesting photographs that come to your mind, images that come to your mind is that of, yes, our Vidhan Sauda. But Bangalore is also known for its vigor, vibrant campus life in various educational institutions. And yes, Bangalore is the cynosure of all the people who want to study and learn. It's become literally a mecca for education. And one of the hotspots of education is Dayanand Sagar College of Dental Sciences. And the student feedback itself is very interesting. One student says the college is a very good place. The college campus is mind blowing. Students will experience a very good climate and food. That's very important, isn't it, for students? And we have an amazing set of management to keep the full entire campus clean. But the disadvantage is that our college doesn't have proper network. Ha ha, that's because mobiles are discouraged in that campus. Well, Dayanand Sagar College of Dental Sciences is located in a very strategic area that's called Kumaraswamy Layout near Jayanagar in Bangalore and is a part of the esteemed Mahatma Gandhi Vidyapita Trust. It is a world-class dental institution providing high quality and distinct education. Now, there is a very small and a very vibrant student population there, and excellent communication between the staff makes it a very prime location and an excellent educational setup. There are extensive preclinical departments, laboratories to its wealth of library, and the classrooms, modern clinical and tutorial facilities, and so on. So, why do you think that I'm talking so much about Dayananda Sagar College of Dental Sciences? Well, that is Dr. Sonahita's Bangalore Connect. So, I thought I would like to represent that college also. So, I'm Sunil Chuplunkar, your Vice President, Business Development with Group Pharmaceuticals. And it's interesting to look at what is a orthodontist. Yes, the braces therapy can be life changing. You know, when people get their braces on, it's a very painful process. But once the braces are on and you have acclimatized yourself to that, the kind of oral quality of life that you have, the confidence that springs to you, it can be a life changing experience. The kind of spouse you get, the kind of learning behavior you get, everything changes. Orthodontics is a specialty of dentistry that deals with the diagnosis, prevention, correction of malpositioned teeth and jaws, and misaligned bite patterns. Yes, so many Hollywood stars, everybody have become stars thanks to these talented dentists. Here is Cindy Crawford before the braces and after the braces. And this is Daniel Ricciardo. Can you see here how handsome he looks after the dental treatment? Emma Watson, this is the one, she is wearing the braces and one without the braces. Tom Cruise, just look at him, how he was without the braces. And after the orthodontic treatment, he's become very handsome. And this is our own Shraddha Kapoor as a teenager. And now she is the bubbly, lively Shraddha Kapoor. We know, a very famous Bollywood actress. That's the magic of what a dentist can do. The smile and success creator. Yes, malocclusions are galore. Nearly 50% of the population in America and definitely in India definitely require orthodontic treatment. And this orthodontic treatment can change the destiny of a person. Yes, a person with orthodontic problems will be more susceptible to tooth decay, gum disease, and so on, including speech impairment, digestive difficulties, and tooth loss. You see, crooked and crowded teeth are very difficult to clean, and that makes tooth decay much faster there. Adults, of course, know how beneficial a beautiful smile can be. but a bad bite can also affect the appearance, and thus misaligned teeth are something that need to be treated. Well, this is the Mona Lisa smile, so mysterious, isn't it? Well, that Mona Lisa smile has led to a film called Mona Lisa Smile, and that's Julia Roberts there. And what a smile! Here you can see Julia Roberts. In one, she's sporting a Duchenne smile, and this is the non Duchenne smile. So, what are they? In the University of California, Berkeley, they studied the class photos of Mills College students, and some of the ladies there sported a Duchenne smile. That is the original non fake smile, which encompasses involuntary and voluntary muscles. The longitudinal study tracked down these women 30 years later. They found genuine smilers were blessed with happier lives in terms of marriage, well being, and career. So, what does it indicate? It indicates you got to learn how to smile genuinely, for which orthodontist will help you. So, make a genuine smile. These are very interesting smiles, and it's the Duchenne smile which made Obama successful, I believe. And here is a pretty air hostess. Don't get taken in by that image. She's sporting a very fake smile, isn't it? Attractive but very fake. Well, this is one of my favorite smiles, the seductive smile. But there is also an interesting smile called the qualifier smile. The qualifier smile is how you break the ice. So I break the ice here and introduce you to the smile specialist of the day, a senior orthodontist, Professor Dr. Sonaita Agarwal, who has 10 years of experience in treating all types of orthodontic mechanotherapies. And yes, she is one of the few Invisalign certified orthodontists in Lucknow, and also the one in the city with an advanced course. Yes, she is currently working as a professor in Sardar Patel Postgraduate Institute of Medical Sciences, Lucknow. It's one of the premier institutions there and has gained a lot of fame in that particular area. So obviously, this institute is now rocking in that area. Professor Madam has conducted webinars as a guest speaker recently, thanks to the lockdown. You can see the topic there itself. She has conducted national workshops also in February 2020. She has won during her career second prize for poster presentation, National Orthodontic Conference, and she has been honored with Certificate of Merit for a clinical innovation at Philippines in 2018. She is a guest speaker to deliver lectures at national orthodontic conferences, and she has developed clinical various types of innovations. She is certified in several issues, as well as she has been trained in many subdisciplines like lingual orthodontics, surgical orthodontics, and so on. You can see here cleft palate is also one of her portfolios. Many feathers in her cap. Just see these snaps, and they are all self-explanatory. So this is a beautiful track record in Bangalore, right from 2005, BDS, MDS. So it's all thanks to the vibrant city called Bangalore. She was the eighth rank holder at the university level, and she had the highest percentage at the college level, and she has been a member of the World Federation of Orthodontics, IDA, and so on. She has umpteen publications with very high points, but one interesting study I found, and I thought I can highlight it here, is the soft tissue projections as a determinant of facial profile attractiveness in local population. I liked it because it was about facial attractiveness. And we marketing guys always believe that facial attractiveness is very important. We do that in our training. And she has attended a dozen CD programs. And here, among the various CD programs she has attended, it's very diverse. One is on clinical photography, and the other is on skeletal correction by growth modulation. So many interesting things. And now she is getting her license for Dubai also. That's amazing. So what you see from her hopeful and very inspiring biodata is that it makes us smile, and the inability to effectively smile increases one's risk for depression. And we at Group Pharmaceuticals believe healthy smiles matter. So thank you very much for listening to me. And now over to Dr. Sonaita, madam. Thank you very much for coming in, madam.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful presentation, wonderful introduction. I didn't expect such a colorful and nice introduction. So that set the mood for today's presentation. I'll just screen share my this thing. 1 second.
Yes, please, please. You can choose it from the application window.
Yeah. I think you will only have to do it. You
So
can.
hang on, guys. Thank you very much. The numbers are increasing. Please call all your folks, your colleagues, your dentists. Let everybody come in. Dr. Sonaita madam is going to start. Yes, that's the
Um,
screen. Can you put it on slideshow, please?
Now I have put it on slideshow. Is it visible?
Yeah, but unfortunately, it is very small, madam. It's not going into slideshow.
It's not going into slideshow.
No, no, no. It's not covering the
Alright.
entire screen.
Fine, then sir, you can
Okay,
only
ma'am.
share.
Yeah, yeah.
I
You have
think
to stop the screen share.
sure.
Will you please stop?
Stop it.
Right. So I will start the presentation. So in this, the
Mm.
first two, three slides are not coming properly.
Oh,
From, yeah, there is some mistake here.
the
From here
font,
it is, yeah.
your laptop would not have that font, your desktop.
Acha,
That's
acha,
why
acha.
that font is not
Okay, okay.
seen. All
Okay.
right.
You can start from here. This font is seen, madam. All
All
these are seen.
right.
Yeah. From the third slide. Yeah. From here it's there.
So in the last few slides, what I had put was the general, it was nothing important, but it was the general complaints that we hear. I work in a dental clinic. So mostly all of my patients, I do ortho, but it's my clinic. So I see a lot of general dentistry also happening. And most of these patients, what they come in, at least 1 in 10 patients, they complain of dental sensitivity. They say that they cannot have anything cold, they cannot have anything sour, and there is a sharp pain when they have an ice cream or anything. And at that time, we prescribe something here and there, and we don't have a definite protocol. And I went through research because this gave me an idea of having a talk on dental hypersensitivity. I did some research, and I realized that there is no universally accepted guidelines for dental hypersensitivity. That's why I wanted to do a talk and to learn and also teach something what I have learned about the advances, how to approach a case of dental hypersensitivity, how to diagnose it correctly so that we don't land up in something else in a soup. So I am Dr. Sonaita Agarwal, and sir has given a beautiful introduction. And I am here because I would love to learn. I have learned a lot about dental hypersensitivity on these few days, and I want to just share it with you. So usually, what is dental hypersensitivity? It's defined as a short, sharp pain that arises from the exposed dentine in response to some stimuli. Non-noxious means that these stimuli are actually not harmful, and for a normal person, they will not elicit any response. But in a person where the enamel has worn off, this will give a sharp, short. Why short? Short is very important. This word is very important because it's transient. The moment it's triggered, the pain will be there, and the moment the stimuli is removed, the pain should be disappear. So this is the clinical diagnosis, the definite diagnosis of dental hypersensitivity, where it's a response to some stimuli. Now I keep on pressing. I have to press here. So what happens is the dentinal wear. Because of the enamel wear, the dentine tubules get exposed, and this exposure actually transmits the stimuli, the sensation, onto the pulpal nerve endings, which creates that sharp pain what we observe in sensitivity. Now basically, let's go a bit theoretical so that we know what actually happens. So there are actually three concepts. The first concept that was given earlier on was the direct innervation theory, where they actually proposed that dentinal tubules only act as they have the nerve endings there, and they actually transmit the stimuli onto the pain center in the brain. But a lot of studies were done, micrological studies, histological studies, and they couldn't find any nerve endings in the dentinal tubules. So this theory was rejected. Then came the theory of the OR theory, the odontoblast receptor theory, where it was proposed that odontoblasts actually act as receptor. They take up the stimuli and then they send it over to the pulpal nerve endings, and from there it goes on to the pain center in the brain. So this was accepted for few of duration of time, but again this was rejected because they couldn't find any synaptic junction between the tubules and the pulpal nerve endings. So they were like, when there is no connection between the tubules and the pulpal nerve endings, how can the stimuli travel? There is no physical connection. So this theory was again discarded, and the most accepted theory till now was the hydrodynamic theory. Now, hydrodynamic theory was given by Brandstone, and it rejected all the previous theories. And what he said was that the dentine, when the enamel gets eroded, the dentinal tubules are exposed, they become permeable, they are larger in number, they become larger in diameter, and they become permeable. So whatever stimuli on the environment provides, it actually creates fluid movement in the dentinal tubule. These fluid movements then send on to the signal to the pulpal nerve endings, if you can see here the pulpal nerve endings, and then it is relayed on to the pain center in the brain. And this was a believable theory because it cleared all the criteria. Any external stimuli, different stimuli evoking the same response. That means there was some fluid movement that was happening that was creating the same response irrespective of the stimuli. But now recently what has happened is they tried to find out which fibers, the myelinated A beta fibers, were thought to create that short, sharp pain and relay the signal. But this theory was recently rejected, and then a new theory was introduced. That was the direct, this was not direct innovation theory, it's the odontoblast transducer theory, which said what they found out was that in some experiments where they have sealed the dentinal tubules, with gutta percha, there also the patient experienced sensitivity. So if the fluid is not moving, how are you getting sensitivity? So that's why, and then if you have caries, if some patient comes with progression of caries, because of caries, sometimes the tubules get obliterated. So there shouldn't be any sensitivity, but the patient complains of aggravated sensitivity. So that made people realize that actually hydrodynamic theory would not stand correct on all grounds. That's when they did more of research and they understood. Now here actually there is an animation which is not showing. It is based on paracrine cell to cell signaling. Let me explain what paracrine means. I told you earlier there is no physical connection between odontoblasts and pulpal cells. So how does the stimuli transfer from the odontoblast to the pulpal nerve endings? Is through the paracrine cell to cell signaling. Paracrine means adjacent. So what happens is odontoblast releases some messengers or some signaling molecules that go on and attach to the receptors onto the pulpal nerve endings, and this is where the stimuli is relayed onto the pulpal nerve endings, and then from there it goes to the pain center. So this theory was accepted because they did a lot of histological studies, a lot of histochemistry, and they found out various receptors that were present on the pulpal nerve endings and various messengers that went on to attach to these receptors and release the ATP. Now ATP we know is the energy molecule, adenosine triphosphate, but actually it is also the pain molecule. It induces pain. So when ATP is released, then you can expect that this transmission goes from odontoblast to the trigeminal neuron in the and to the pain center in the brain, and because of that the sharp pain is experienced. So this theory was proposed in I think 2020 in one of the papers, and this is right now the most accepted theory. Now theory is over. Let's come to the clinical diagnosis. This slide was supposed to be the history. What we do when the patient comes in is first foremost is the chief complaint of the patient, and then the history of the patient. So chief complaint of the patient should be in the patient's own words, and he should complain of a sharp pain that is always triggered by some external stimuli, whether it is heat, cold, or any other mechanical stimulation, and the pain should disappear after the removal of the external stimulus. This is very important, because if the pain is lingering, that means that the diagnosis will not be of hypersensitivity. It could be anything related to the pulp or the periodontal tissue. Next thing what you do is take the history. I'll take it later. The clinical signs, what you will see, you can see in a patient with DHS would be gingival recession. You might see some enamel wear, and you can do a scratch test, take an take an explorer and run it onto the exposed area to see if it's triggering the pain sensation. Also, what you can do is give some stimuli, mechanical stimuli, thermal stimuli. You can blast air from your three-way syringe or an air jet onto the suspected tooth, and then see whether the patient complains of the same type of pain, and on a removal of your air jet, whether the pain is relieved. Also, there is something called as endo ice or endo frost, which endodontists use to check pulp vitality. That can be checked onto each tooth, the buccal and the palatal surface, to see whether it is triggering that sensation of pain, sharp pain or not. So these are all the clinical things you can do. One more thing is what we have read in BDS is tender on percussion. Tender on percussion means it is periodontitis or pulpitis. So do vertical and horizontal percussion both. Now, vertical percussion, if it is tender on vertical percussion, that could mean that it has apical periodontitis, or the patient might have pulpitis, or there might be a vertical root fracture. If the patient is experiencing tenderness on horizontal, it could mean that it is lateral or marginal periodontitis. So these are two differentiating factors. So it should not be tender on percussion. If the patient has normal DHS or dental hypersensitivity, then it should not be tender on percussion. If it is TOP, then you should go for these diseases. There is something called as tooth slot. If you don't have tooth sleuth, then you can also go for a cotton ball. You can ask the patient to bite on that cotton roll or on the tooth sleuth, and on masticate or bite onto that. So if the patient experiences any sharp pain while biting, that is an indication of cracked tooth syndrome. So there could be any enamel cracks or any fractures that are present in the root that could lead to the pain on biting. So again, this is a differentiating factor when you see a patient with chief complaint of DHS. So any non-transient lingering dental pain, even after the removal of stimulus, could indicate that there is some pulpitis, pulpal inflammation, or any periodontal problem, or it could be any caries or fracture. So you need to all these uh, things are different and they have different management. So you have to diagnose and then proceed with the management. This was history. What I wanted to tell you before, after taking the chief complaint, you have to take the dietary habits into consideration. Patients with low acidic pH in their diet, like citrus fruits or lot of citrus fruit, could complain of sensitivity. Patients with a history of gastric reflux or GERD, or a history of bulimia. If you know what is bulimia, bulimia is a psychological problem where the patient eats and then vomits, continuously vomits, just to maintain their weight or their figure or whatever. So this, actually, the acid that comes out erodes the enamel surface and leads to sensitivity. Gastric reflux, as everyone knows, because of the acid reflux, again enamel erosion can occur. Habits, certain parafunctional habits like bruxism, clenching, or you have any other habits that could lead to enamel wear and tear, could cause sensitivity. So these are the predisposing factors where you have bruxism, acidic diet habits, what I've told you, bulimia and gastric reflux, any gingival recession, or one important thing that everyone has, people with healthy teeth, actually, they're more concerned about hygiene. So overzealous toothbrushing. Some patients come to me, they say, we brush twice, not twice, thrice or four times a day, and we brush for 5 minutes, and we, nicely rugglify. So when you do that, what happens? You are eroding enamel, and because of that, you can get dentine hypersensitivity also. So this has to be taken care of. This is a common complaint I've seen, and where people use abrasives in their toothpaste just to make their teeth white, or people brushing with salt. These are cases where you can see enamel dentinal hypersensitivity. Parafunctional habits I have already taken. These can be managed with night guard and psychological counseling, because these habits are related mostly to your psyche. So, occlusal splints, night guards can be prescribed to avoid enamel wear. Correct toothbrushing technique and use of soft toothbrushes. What soft toothbrushes means, with soft ends, but also the number of bristles. The number of bristles should be at least more than 20,000. That is ultra soft. For patients who are complaining of sensitivity, you need to give them ultra soft toothbrushes with more number of bristles, soft ended. And the correct brushing technique should be instructed to them. Dietary habit also should be taken into consideration. Patients with lot of caffeine, lot of citrus diet should be counseled and advised on reduction of this. Now, one differential diagnosis, one syndrome that mimics dental hypersensitivity is cracked tooth syndrome. Here, the animation is not working. I'll take it onto the slide. So, cracked tooth syndrome is a normal crack that occurs on throughout the enamel. It could extend down deep to the pulp also, but usually it is extending only in the enamel, and where dentine gets exposed, the patient will have, otherwise it's asymptomatic. Where it goes to the dentine, it will have, a patient will complain of sensitivity. So how to diagnose this? Best way of diagnosing this is trans illumination tests, where you illuminate it, the tooth under there is under a light, and you can see the enamel cracks. Now, the management of this depends on how deep the crack is, whether it is superficial or it is going deep. If it is superficial, you can remove the compromised portion and restore it with composite or anything. Or if it is deeper, then you have to do it according to you. Whether if pulp is involved, you can go for RCT or restorations. If there is no pulpal, then you can stabilize the crown, and you can use composites or any other metal restorations, anything that can be done to preserve the tooth. There are few lesions that come under the category of NCCL, non-carious cervical lesions. Four of them are there, and I usually used to get confused between these four. What are these? Especially abrasion and abfraction. So there is attrition, erosion, abrasion, and abfraction. Attrition is the enamel wear when there is tooth-to-tooth contact. So when this I know properly, because this is due to malocclusion. When you have an edge-to-edge bite, or you have an instanding, you have misaligned teeth, and the teeth are hitting against each other during occlusion, then you have attrition. Usually the incisal edges get attrited or the posteriors get attrited. Erosion is, as the name suggests, some people call it corrosion also. It is due to the chemical dissolution of enamel. So it is not physical, it is due to the acids released. If the patient is suffering from gastric reflux, or she has bulimia or any other problem, then what happens is the acids constantly dissolve the enamel and expose the dentine. This is called as erosion. What you see in erosion is very shiny wear facets on the labial or palatal surfaces of the teeth. And the abrasion is any tooth wear that is occurring due to an external agent. Suppose for best example is aggressive brushing, toothbrushing. Because of that, the gingival marginal areas, you will see shallow facets. That could be abrasion. Abfraction, which is very clear. It is wedge shaped. Let me show you. Again, the animation is not working. So here, this one patient, I wanted to show you this case because one patient can have all the four diseases, all the four defects. One is attrition, where you have tooth wear because of edge-to-edge bite. So the lower incisors have also gone, and the abrasion part would be because of, what did I say, because of aggressive toothbrushing or any foreign agent or external agent, because of the physical tooth wear. Erosion is chemical. It could be due to gastric acid reflux or bulimia or any other systemic disease. Abfraction are wedge-like triangular cutouts in the marginal area, cervical area near the marginal gingiva. And this is not due to any agent. It is because of masticatory forces. There is if there is loading, extra loading on one tooth, again because of misalignment or any other reason, if there are heavy masticatory forces, the tooth undergoes flexure. That is called as cuspal flexure. So because of cuspal flexure, there is breakages of bonds, and because of that the enamel comes out in pieces in wedge shaped areas. So these can be again restored. These four can cause retinal hypersensitivity, and it can be restored using anything. Abfractions can be restored using composites. Attrition, you will have to see the extent of attrition and then choose the whether you want to go for composite buildups or crowns or veneers. And erosion, you will have to treat the etiology. You cannot treat the teeth without treating the etiology. Gingival recession we have taken. Gingival recession is pretty easy to see because the root, why gingival recession causes sensitivity is because the root dentin gets exposed. The crown is normal, but the root dentin gets exposed, and because of that you get sensitivity. So again, here gingival treatments are of prime importance. If proper oral hygiene, oral prophylaxis cannot get it back, then you can go for mucogingival surgery, where they take a flap and raise the flap and cover the exposed root dentin. That could prevent the dental hypersensitivity. One very common reason what we see is after a restoration of a tooth, the patient complains of hypersensitivity. Now, caries lesions cause hypersensitivity. Why? More than pain, why they cause hypersensitivity is because as you go deeper into dentine, the number of dentinal tubule increases, their diameter increases, and they become shorter in length. So the passage of stimulus is fast, and there is more of stimuli that can be accommodated. That's why caries lesions experience more sensitivity. And if you restore it not in the proper way, if you are under curing your resin, if you are using composite, there is something called as if you are using amalgam also, there is something called as polymerization shrinkage. If you are not taking care of that, the restoration leaves the walls and then it shrinks. That could lead to micro leakage. Because of micro leakage, you can have sensitivity because the tubules are exposed. Saliva is a very major factor in causing micro leakage, and saliva, if it goes in, it will definitely cause sensitivity. So these are the some of the reasons. And secondary caries, as you can see in the diagram here, amalgam restoration, it's a faulty restoration, you can see secondary caries, and this patient would definitely complain of some sensitivity. So you need to diagnose this also, and then take the proper steps. Teeth whitening procedures, patient complain of hypersensitivity, but it is temporary. It remains there because a layer of enamel is eroded. Some people can feel sensitivity to varying extents, varying intensity, but it is usually temporary. You should just advise the patient to take some precautions. And after bleaching, you can use a tooth desensitizer or any tooth desensitizing toothpaste. You can modify their diet to avoid citric fruits or anything citric, low pH food items, and avoid any trigger factors. Anything that can cause sensitivity, like hot or cold beverages, you can ask the patient to avoid, and usually this just resolves on its own. You don't have to do any treatment at all. So these are the conditions which have to be excluded when you're diagnosing dental hypersensitivity. We have taken all of them. Caries is that is one cause. Cracked tooth syndrome, you will have to diagnose by tapping, percussion, or you can use illumination, or the tooth sleuth, you can use that. Pulpitis, periodontitis, it's percussion test, and radiographs are important in that. And any habits, if the patient complains of any habits or any systemic diseases, history is really, really, really important. So apart from that, the general management protocol, what we follow is first oral hygiene education and the brushing technique, because nobody knows the proper method of brushing. That is the Bas technique, where we take at 45 degrees, or the rolling motion technique that has to be used. Soft brushes with more number of bristles. Behavioral control means the elimination of any etiologic factors or any habits that could contribute to dental hypersensitivity. And don't go for invasive treatments like crowns or surgeries right at the first go. First, try to use the non-invasive treatments, because most of the patients are actually, the pain is relieved by number 3, the non-invasive treatment. So let's just see what comes in non-invasive treatments. So non-invasive treatment, the basic mechanism are two mechanisms. One is that you reduce the excitability of the nerves. The nerves should not be excited, so there won't be any pain. Or you occlude the dentinal tubules, the fluid movements or the dentinal tubules. If they are occluded totally, then the signal will not pass through onto the pulp. So these two mechanisms have given rise to many agents. So it's tough to take all the agents in one go. We have categorized it into nerve desensitization. So potassium salt actually causes decreases the nerve sensory impulse, and because of that most of the toothpastes have this potassium nitrate or potassium oxalates. And toothpastes are easy to use, they are freely available, so patients can use this. But there are no such studies. I went through many studies, couldn't find any study where there was a good number of good large amount of evidence that says that it is effective in DHS, dental hypersensitivity. Also, it will, for these toothpaste to act, it takes around 4 to 8 weeks. So the patient has to continuously use it for at least 4 weeks for this chemical to work on the hypersensitivity. Now, the second mechanism, what I had told you, was occluding the dentinal tubule. So you can occlude the dentinal tubule by various methods. One is protein precipitation. So glutaraldehyde, silver nitrate, or zinc chloride can usually work on this. They combine with the protein present in the dentinal tubule, and then they precipitate. The precipitate that's formed actually occludes the dentinal tubule. Next comes is the sodium fluoride and stannous fluoride combination. Now, sodium fluoride and stannous fluoride, they work on the concept that they decrease the dentinal permeability. That means that the dentine tubule will not allow the passage of stimulus, and also it deposits fluoride crystals. Now, one study says that you use 0.4% of stannous fluoride plus 0.7% of fluoride. That gives you around 98% of relief in dental hypersensitivity. It does not mention the duration for how much, but it says that it relieves the pain. Also, what I feel are that these chemicals, they will work, they deposit, they occlude the dentinal tubule. But what happens is all these compounds which are deposited can be eroded or can be broken away by brushing. Normal brushing can take these out. So it is not effective for long term. It could be effective only for a short term, around 4 weeks or 6 weeks. After that, if the patient stops using these compounds, the sensitivity comes back again. Then some people said that you can use varnishes and sealers. So basic component of them, these sealers, is glutaraldehyde and HEMA, that is hydroxyethyl methacrylate. What it does, it binds with the albumin of the dentinal tubule, and it occludes the dentinal tubule. Again, these resin tags that are formed are not that deep, and they can be broken away. Composite, a thin layer can be broken away. Glass ionomers can come out. So these are not effective. Dentine bonding agents also, it can work from 3 to 6 months. That's the duration, the largest duration that is given in a study, that it was effective for 3 to 6 months. But again, it's not something that is permanent. So apart from that, there are some recent advances that have happened. Recent advances, if we take, these are the 4 advances that I went through, that is Novomin technology, pro-arginine technology, and nanotechnology. So pro-arginine technology usually uses a salt combination of calcium carbonate and 8% arginine. They claim that it's a big breakthrough. Why? Because it creates a calcium rich layer that seals the surface of dentinal tubules, and it effectively relieves dental hypersensitivity. This many of the toothpastes nowadays are using. You can see, but if there was a study where they had taken control pro-arginine and nanohydroxyapatite, so the occlusion was better with nanohydroxyapatite. Coming to that, first, Novomin technology. Again, there is Novomin and Biomine. Both are same. Both are based on bioglass technology, and they have around 15% of calcium sodium phosphosilicate. And what it does is it mimics the it creates a salt that mimics hydroxyapatite. So this was first used in orthopedics, where they wanted to uh, create a surface between the implant and the bone to stimulate bone formation. So what, when they found the effectiveness there, they adopted it and got it into dentistry. And what they found was that these layers, the hydroxyapatite like layer that is formed, it penetrated deep into the tubule, and also it mimicked the actual hydroxyapatite. So this was a breakthrough thing in the treatment of dental hypersensitivity. And it is also said that it is resistant to mechanical stimulation. That means it is quite deep, so it is not removed by mechanical brushing or any other factors. So it remains for a longer duration of time, and it is more efficient than the salts that are before given. The next one was nanotechnology. Again, this is similar to the previous one. Here they are using mesoporous silica nanoparticles and nano hydroxyapatite crystals. These two are used, and they are nano in nanometers. Their particle size is very small. That's why they go deep into the tubule, around 200 nanometers, and then they effectively occlude the dentinal tubule, and they form a dentinal plug. So this is also resistant to acids. This is resistance to mechanical stimulation and resistant to breakages. So that's why it is more effective. Apart from that, lasers can have been used in dentistry for a number of reasons, and they can be also, they claim that they can be used to reduce dental hypersensitivity. Through, there are three concepts that they say. They either occlude by coagulating the proteins inside the dentinal tubule, or they melt the dentinal tubule. So this is not possible. Melting means it is at a high temperature, and then they can also discharge the nerve endings. That's why the impulses don't travel. So the most accepted concept is occlusion through coagulation of proteins. And two types of lasers can be used: either the Nd:YAG or the CO2 lasers, that is the high output lasers, or the low output lasers. Now the high output lasers, the problem is the high heat that could again affect the pulp and cause irreversible damage. So what I found in studies was that low output power lasers like helium neon lasers, or the new ones, that is Gaia lasers, that can be used to occlude the dentinal tubule, and the hypersensitivity symptoms reduced for a longer period of time. And this was also found, lasers are also found to be pretty effective. Nothing is complete if you don't use anything herbal or anything homeopathic. So there is a chemical that has been, there is also a paper published, propolis. It has been used in many things. Karyostatic effect has been seen, gum diseases, and it is anti-inflammatory and antibacterial. It is actually derived from beehive. So this chemical, they say, is can be used for different things, and it can also be used for decreasing the sensitivity. There are no studies that tell the exact mechanism how it works, but it occludes the dentinal tubule. So this is also one of the solutions which are now in the process. And lastly but not the least, we are using all this to occlude the dentinal tubule because we lost something. We exposed the dentine enamel. So what if we could regenerate it rather than using something to occlude it? What if we could regenerate the tubular nature and regenerate a dentine and create a protective layer? So this is where genetics come into play, and there are studies where dentine have been regenerated using copine 7, that is CPNE7, and they have found that this actually stimulates the odontoblast to create dentine in the pulp, and that's how the pulp is protected from the external stimuli. And it also reduces the dentine permeability. So the dentine is not, it won't accept more stimuli propagation. So because of this could be the ultimate solution for dentinal hypersensitivity. And because of this, all the other salts or toothpaste could go out of the window. But there is a lot of research going on in this area. Still, there is a lot of time for this to happen. So if you have a patient with complaint of dental hypersensitivity, what you do is assess the risk factors, assess the diet, assess their habits, behavior, brushing technique, everything. modify that. If that doesn't help, then go with non-invasive therapies first, because they work. The both the home or in office, it will work. If it doesn't work, then you go for invasive therapies like crown restorations or cervical restorations or anything else, root coverage procedures. But basically, this is the step. First, modify the behavior, then go for non-invasive, and then lastly for invasive procedures. So I would like to finish this with this quote that people don't realize, and they tolerate tooth sensitivity far too long, thinking that there is no solution. Actually, we also think, not people. As dentists, we also think that अरे कुछ नहीं हो सकता है, but most of the time it can be reduced or eliminated totally. So let's start treating dental hypersensitivity with the proper protocol. Thank you for listening, and thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity to share my views.
Madam, it was awesome. Actually, there are a lot of encomiums. Congratulations. It was such a lucid and a fantastic webinar that people were thrilled listening to you. You are so eloquent. Congratulations to your talent. Dr. Sudhanshu wants to know, how frequently can we give teeth whitening treatment to patient?
Teeth whitening procedures, sir, I recommend my patients only once a year, because a lot of enamel wear happens. One sitting only, the patient experiences a lot of sensitivity. So you should not advise more frequent teeth whitening procedures. And I actually don't recommend also teeth whitening procedures. When my patients ask for teeth whitening, the thing is that it's temporary. It's like hair bleaching. You're actually eroding enamel, losing something to gain something which is temporary. So it should not be recommended frequently. Once a year is fine, and not multiple sittings, only 2 sittings, and that too with around 1 week or 10 days duration between 2 sittings. I would recommend that.
That's very honest and very good opinion. Madam, any chance that severe abrasion can lead to abfraction?
Abrasion, yeah, if the tooth gets weakened. See, abrasion is erosion due to tooth brushing. So obviously you're losing tooth structure, and the masticatory load is same. So if the load increases, it could lead to abfraction. You need to treat it abrasion as soon as possible. It could lead to
Great.
abfraction.
So
Definitely.
Dr. Chawla will be happy. And there are other questions. One gentleman wants to know, how normal is it for normal clinical procedures like filling, scaling, etc., to have some sort of dental sensitivity, at
Yes.
least discomfort, if not
Yes,
pain? Yeah.
yes, it is there. It is there, and I had a chart which I didn't show you. In that post restoration and sensitivity, the reasons were discussed. So one of the common reasons, if you while cutting, while cavity cutting, if you're using excessive speed or excessive heat generation without proper, if you're not irrigating it to, then that could result in hypersensitivity post restoration. That is one of the common factor, that heat generation because of that. Or if you are cutting too much of going too much into the dentine closer to the pulp, that could also lead to dental hypersensitivity.
So it's always a distinct possibility in the routine dental
Yes,
procedures.
yes,
A
yes.
possibility is there. At least if not pain, some discomfort will result.
That discomfort is there because of the speed of the handpiece. You have to take care of the heat generation. Also, you have to the vibration of the handpiece. That also is one of the factors. These
So
two, three factors are.
actually, talking from the marketing angle, we promote our products for post-operative hypersensitivity, discomfort, and pain. That is
Yes.
our occlusive toothpastes. So that's
This
aside. I don't.
Sir, this has to be recommended because a few of my patients have complained after filling that there was slight sensitivity. So if we can prescribe these, then the sensitivity can be reduced to a larger extent.
Yes, thank you, kind of you. Madam, this last question. This theory about the neurotransmitters, or what you call as the paracrine chemicals, which are communicating to each other, causing the sensitivity pain, that was very, very exciting, ma'am. Many people have astonished because it's not come to the textbook level, I think,
Yes, sir.
this
It's
theory.
published in 2020, and
Yes.
it's there is only one paper, That's been
Okay.
published in 2020. I can share it if you want to. I can share it to you through mail also. So in that
Yes.
they have said that there are certain neurotransmitters that are released from odontoblasts, and these
Oh,
neurotransmitters actually go and signal the pulp nerve endings to carry the stimulus forward. So the
okay.
hydrodynamic theory, which is there in every textbook, that is not rejected, as I've told in the PPT, but there is a
Yeah.
new theory that has come over, that the fluid,
Yeah.
because if you're sealing the dentinal tubule, there is no fluid movement. Then how the patient is having sensitivity even after sealing the tubules? That
Hmm.
question led to this research, and then this is what they found.
Super. I think this is an area which will create a lot of excitement. In
Yes,
fact, we can ask a panel of doctors also to discuss only on that theory because many people would be interested, and many of the what do you say ground level practitioners are still not aware of it. And you just said it's
yes,
from 2020 paper, so it's
yes.
kind of a headline hitting thing that you have done. And
And I like to
madam,
do, sir, I am an orthodontist, so but I like to do proper research about a topic. And this is, I also was surprised to find this.
yeah.
So I found that it was my duty. I realized that I should share it with everyone.
It was a superior display of your interest, passion for dentistry. And
Thank you.
coming from me, because I am 100% Bangalore Mysore guy, so I
Oh,
am going to say you are a typical Bangalorean. I
yes,
mean, in the sense that Bangalorean is still there in you, that
yes,
Cosmo
sir.
touch is there in you. Thank you very much for being there like that, and
Thank you.
always welcome back to Bangalore.
Yes, sir. Definitely, I'm coming soon. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
listening to me.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So, viewers, I'm sure that you are all very happy and excited and very informed with this excellent presentation. Particularly, she has provided updated information, and it was a beautiful synopsis of the entire subject, and it was done so objectively. There was no bias towards any product or therapy or anything. That is awesome. That's why I said it's typical Bangalorean.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And
Thank
you can just thank the attendees. Then, with your permission, I will close the webinar.
Thank you so much for listening to me, everyone. And I hope to see you soon on some other topic. We can do some research and then share it. Thank you so much.
Awesome, madam. Awesome. So, I take
Bye,
your
sir.
permission to close the event now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.